Okay, I've been here so many times already for Teves, Teves. So I have to really think what I've said before, what I haven't said before. Okay, anyway. I thought I'd share with you a few things, first of all, about some of my experiences that I had over the years with the Rebbe. Baruch Hashem, I was Zocher from Teves, 1959, until Tovshin base. I have numerous letters from the Rebbe. Originally, most of the letters were in English, so I went to Yeshiva in Farbrengen. Then I was elevated to get letters in Rosh Hashanah. And one of the things that the Rebbe was always pushing with me was the idea of kiruv, of being the car of other people. Every time I drive to the Rebbe, for example, when I was in Farbrengen, and I used to write to the Rebbe that I was learning with some other bochrim from England and other places, and the Rebbe was always very machazek this idea that I was learning with other people. And I remember that when I first went to the Rebbe, in El Tovshin Chof Dalet, just before the Rebbe's Santana, the Rebbe's mother was Nifta. And already then, when I wrote into the Rebbe a duch, I wrote into the Rebbe about some of the things that I'd been doing during the summer in England prior to coming to New York, particularly that I'd gone to Gan Yisrael as a counselor in the camp, and straight away the Rebbe gave me a shlichus that I should be picking out a few of the campers and sending them letters, writing to them, and keeping in contact with them. And as time went on, this approach and this push from the Rebbe of doing more work in this direction was always something forthcoming. There used to be, or there still is, a hardware store in Kingston Avenue called Weinstein's. I think it's now owned by the Pinson family. It was owned originally by a non-religious family who lived in Crown Heights, and I used to have a lot of, I used to often go into his store, and when it came to Erev Pesach, Tovshin Chof, the first year, when I was in 770, and I happened to say, I said to the Rebbe, I asked the Rebbe for matzah for Mr. Weinstein in Kingston Avenue. And the Rebbe said to me straight away, Rosh V'shaychas hostem etem, what's your connection with him? To Bekenzach Mitzainer Azur. Do you know his son? So obviously, there's always something that the Rebbe was pushing us to do. And I think I've told over before that back in over nearly 51 years ago, back in Tovshin Chof, when the Rebbe started the first of the Mitzvot, he started the film campaign. So again, one of the things that the Rebbe did was that he was very machazek my various pa'ulas that I used to do in and around Crown Heights in connection with mitzvah films. In fact, at the time of the 6-Day War and just after it, I was really running the whole film campaign single-handed in and around Crown Heights. And on on the first morning of the 6-day war, I don't know if anyone remembers, I may have told us so before, that on the first morning of the 6-day war, what happened was that we came in to Yeshiva, we came into Zal for period of davening, the Seder Chasidus in the morning, on the Monday morning, and we already heard that Eretz Yisrael had virtually destroyed all of the Arab air force on the ground, that Israel already had total air superiority. He had control of all the air in the whole area, and the Nissim, the miracles, the Nissim, the flows continued to flow for the 6 days throughout the whole war. And on the first morning, on the Monday morning, after davening, I decided that I would go out on Mivsat Tefillin. In those days, a lot of the stores in Kingston Avenue, if you know Kingston Avenue, Empire Boulevard, Eastern Parkway, Nostrand, Utica, numerous of these stores were owned by non-religious Jewish people. And I remember to this day, on the first morning, that there was not one person who refused to put on tefillin. On the Monday morning, the euphoria, the excitement, the Jewish pride that everyone had in the fact that Eretz Yisrael was already so victorious in such a short space of time, touched everyone. On the first morning, there was not a person, the first day, there was not a person who refused to put on tefillin. And this routine started to progress, and every day, Bein Sadorim, in the morning, before, after Seder Chasidus, before davening, I used to go across to the bank, across the street from 770, and again the manager and the deputy manager were Jewish people. They would put on tefillin every day. There was various stores in Kingston Avenue, probably about 15, 20 people just on Kingston Avenue alone, who happily would put on tefillin every day, each day when I approached them. And after a couple of weeks of doing this, I wrote into the Rebbe, Erev Yud Beis Tammuz, Tovshin Yahrzeit, 1967, and I got a beautiful answer from the Rebbe. The answer was, Tach Tach of Besuras Teves, great, very much heartened, and glad to hear the good news. Rabbi, Shemimenu Yiru V'chein Yasser Rabbi. The answer of the Rebbe was that Halabai, one should learn from what I was doing, but V'chein Yasser Rabbi, and many other people should do the same. And then, every couple of weeks, I would write into the Rebbe again about the different people that I was visiting each day. And then, I don't know if those of you, many of you have probably been to Crown Heights, and you know that there's 2 or 3 very large army bases, armories, in and around Crown Heights. There's one on President Street by Bedford Avenue. There's one across the street by Bedford and Dean, where the Lubavitch Yeshiva used to be, on Bedford Avenue. And one day, I rang the bell of the armory and asked to speak to someone. And the person in charge welcomed me in, and I asked him about if there's any, how it works. At that particular time, there was a war. America was very involved in a war with Vietnam, and the Chachamim, the clever Jewish guys who didn't want to go to the war front in Vietnam, they would join the National Guard instead, which would involve practicing, training every weekend instead of going full time to the war front. And once or twice a year they go to a training camp in Peekskill or one or two other places, or Peekskill one or two times a year for a more lengthy training session. And what transpired was that there was quite a lot of Jewish people in this armory on the weekend, and we arranged that we would start going there on a Shabbos morning to hold services on Shabbos. So on Shabbos morning, around about 8:45 in the morning, I would go with one or two other people, and we'd walk over to President Street and the Armory on Bedford Avenue, and we'd hold a short service, davening to speak to the Rebbe there, and then again on a Sunday also. And what happened was that in the armory across the street from Bedford and Dean, where the Lubavitch Yeshiva used to be, many years ago, there on a Sunday, a weekend, there could be as many as maybe 100 or 200 Jewish people training among the soldiers who were there for training those weekends. And we used to go from 7:70 on the Sunday morning. We had Rishus and Holla. Well, we didn't have Rishus the first week, but we went. A whole number of us went, and we took a number of Bochum with us. And while I was doing the Tabernacle, some davening and speaking to the soldiers, they were all being individually called out to put on tefillin, and the Bochum would quickly, one after the other, put on, do the next one in the short space of time that was allotted to us. And a very lot of people would put on tefillin on the Sunday morning of this National Guard armory. When we came back from this pula, myself, Chaim, one or two other people, we wrote into the Rebbe about what was going on, and the Rebbe said, again, Tach B'suras Teves v'hi rotzein she'yitoisev b'chol anal holech v'hoisev oher. Should be Hashem's will that you should continue and increase in all these pa'ulas and these activities in an open of holech, going v'hoilech v'oher, and illuminating in all powerful expressions of getting on with doing the job. That evening, I got a call from Rabbi Benjamin Klein, or Shalom, and he told me that Rabbi Kolakov wanted to speak to me. What had I done wrong? Anyway, I went into Rabbi Kolakov, or Shalom, and he said to me that Banagea, in connection with this Pa'ulas, with the armories, to host and often a checkbook. You have an open checkbook, and any funds, obviously I was a boch in yeshiva, so I wasn't into fundraising, but it obviously had a great hashivas by the Rebbe, these pa'ulas, these activities, and the Rebbe had instructed him to give over to make sure that any funds required in order to make these pa'ulas, these activities happen, funds would be made available for us to do so. And over the next more or less 2 years, till I left 770, just before I got married, the Rebbe was very mechazek these boulas, and Baruch Hashem, this is maybe part of the beginning of Lubavitch building. Now, I'd like to tell you another story, and the other story is the following, that, again, I may have shared it with some of you before, may have shared it, and others shared it, but on one particular occasion, what happened was that on one particular occasion, we were about to travel from Scotland to here to Melbourne, and we came up, there was various hiccups in relationship to the ticket and bits and pieces, and you know, when things are not going glatic, they're not going smooth, you start to think, you know, maybe should we go, shouldn't we go, and everything else. And I quickly wrote a letter, and I faxed it to the oil to put on the tziyah, and I put it into the Igros Kodesh, and it came up the following answers in Igros Kodesh, and it says the following. Similarly, in relationship to the avodah, the service of every Jew in this world, it's not sufficient that he should have influence over people, his family, his house, Iroi, his city, and the country where he lives. Elabat, Shitzorim, Lasal, Derech, Aderech, Amula, Ba'at, Lapina, Achi, Achoike, Achatziteva. Until your sphere of influence should stretch out and reach to the furthest points in the world. I haven't yet reached New Zealand, but we've reached Melbourne, and Baruch Hashem, obviously straight away we got moving, and Baruch Hashem, we had a very successful trip at the time. And there's another example that when the Rebbe wants to give you an answer, somehow or another he reaches you and he gives you an answer. Well, let's sing a nigun, and then we can continue with some more stories and other things. The main thing is that we should be zocha to the scholars of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach Miyad Mamash. Each and every one of us should go out of Golas, Bekor Mamash. It's long overdue that we should get out of Golas, and each and every one of us is Suneinu Lyricis Malkeinu. We want to see the scholars of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe should be the scholar to take us out of the Matzamas of the Mokim. Pagra comes to a time like Chof Teves, when we try to connect and reconnect with the Alter Rebbe, and through the Alter Rebbe we try to connect with the Malam Mekoimoi, each the successor from the Alter Rebbe all the way through to the Rebbe, the Seder Einu. So we have to try and connect with the things that the Rebbe pushed us to do, both in reference to learning, to davening, shlichus, each person according to his situation. We have to try and to be mamshech everything, those of us who are zeicher to have actual heroes, guidance, letters, instructions from the Rebbe before Gimel Tammuz. For sure, we have to try to continue holding on to the planka, continuing holding on to the doorknob of the Rebbe's room, holding on to the Rebbe, and to trying to develop and strengthen our kashrus. And in actual fact, with all the different stories that are going around all the time about the tremendous moifsim which the Rebbe was able to help people. There's just a story now that's been floating around the last few days, that there was a story of a particular couple that they're engaged to be married. The person tells over the actual story themselves. And before they got married, they went in to the Rebbe for Yechidus, or Brocha. And what happened was that the Rebbe gave a Brocha to them, and it was arranged, it was prearranged between the two people that during the course of the Yechidus, that the wife, the Kala rather, she wanted to speak to the Rebbe herself. When have you heard the story the last few days? She wanted to speak to the Rebbe herself, and it was arranged that the Chosen, he went out the room, and the Kala, she spoke to the Rebbe. And what she spoke to the Rebbe about was that she, by nature, she had a very bad temper. And because of this, she was wondering, she wasn't sure whether she should actually go ahead with the shidduch, she should go ahead with the marriage, because maybe, God forbid, chas v'shalom, it will lead to a divorce, it will lead to arguing and strife between them. And the Rebbe told her that what she should do is, the Rebbe gave her a bracha, that please God, she'll have many children. And the Rebbe told her that in the meantime, once she has children, she'll learn from the children to have more patience, and through this she'll become a calmer person. And in the meantime, until she's blessed with family, what she do is that she should do voluntary work, working with children. And at the particular time, Rabbi Brona, Sheyechia, was not very happy what's going on, and everything else going out, coming in, and then the Rebbe called the Chosen to come back in again, and the Rebbe gave them over the bracha, that the wedding should be, the chassan should be b'shot over mitzlachas, they should be blessed with family, and so on and so forth. Anyway, they got married, and unfortunately, time went by, 6 months, a year, a bit more went by, and what happened was that they never had children. And they went to various gynecologists, they went to various doctors in this particular field, and each doctor confirmed that unfortunately the woman had she didn't have a fully developed womb, and therefore it was not possible for her to have any children. Anyway, she came out, went to another doctor, everybody confirmed the same diagnosis, that this is her condition. Anyway, 3 or 4 weeks later, lo and behold, Baruch Hashem, she was muberet, she was expecting her first child, and eventually she was blessed. She had betochen in the blessing that the Rebbe had blessed her, that they'd have many children, and Baruch Hashem, they were blessed to have many children, a large family, so much so, the most unusual thing of the story is that the person with whom it took place told over on this video, it's circulating around us now, that she eventually, when she was already becoming towards the menopause, the change of life, and she was going to a doctor for having a checkup, the doctor said to her, you know, I feel for you, because obviously with your condition that you have a not fully developed womb, it must be very sad for you to see that all your friends are blessed with family and you haven't got any children. She didn't say anything to the doctor, and she just let him speak, and she walked out the room. Anyway, but despite the fact that she had some kind of physical deficiency within herself, Baruch Hashem, the Rebbe's blessing was mekuyim time and time again, and Baruch Hashem, she had a very large family. There was a taxi company in Crown Heights called Union Car Service on Kingston Avenue, and the balabos there, I can't remember the person's name, I used to be very friendly with him, but the balabos, the owner's name, the owner, he unfortunately never had any children. Went on for many years, he never had any children, and he used to keep writing into the Rebbe for a bracha, and the Rebbe would answer him, and various other brachas, and he used to go for dollars, and then one time the Rebbe said to him, the Rebbe, when he went over for dollars, and the Rebbe gave him a bracha for children, and then he said to the Rebbe, he was so excited with the bracha the Rebbe gave him, he said, can I go and buy the pram? Can I go and buy the carriage right now? And the Rebbe gave him another dollar to buy the carriage. And sure enough, a year later, he was blessed with twins, and the same thing happened again. He was blessed with twins a second time. Baruch Hashem, he had 4 or 5 children as a result of the Rebbe's brachas. Because he believed, he had emunah and betochen, he believed in the bracha of the Rebbe, and as a result of this, the bracha was mekuyim, and not only that, but he made a keli by going out and buying the carriage on the instructions of the Rebbe, buying the pram on the instructions of the Rebbe. That was a keli to show that he had real emes of betochen, and he had real emunah in the Rebbe's bracha, v'yaminu v'Hashem u'Moshe Avdoi, and the results of this, he was blessed to have family. As I mentioned before, I've shared with you in the past, there's various letters that the Rebbe wrote to various people back before the Rebbe was Rebbe, in Tovshin Zion, Tovshin Ches, 1947, 48, and the Rebbe wrote on numerous occasions where he timed why he was writing to Anash, to the Lubavitch community in Paris at the time, and he was complaining how come that not enough is being done in connection with spreading about the Mefasem, about the Koyach, that there Yesh Rebbe B'Yisrael, that we have a Rebbe, and the Rebbe is available to give us guidance. And the Rebbe told over stories how various people would used to write to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said that there was this particular bocher. He was not from a Nash. He was not from the Lubavitch family, not Gezer Nash. He didn't have any connection whatsoever. And he wrote to the Rebbe, about various things. And the Rebbe said that this person, he was writing to the Rebbe asking, he was writing to ask the Rebbe about buying a property, about a home, about buying a business. And the Rebbe said, both everybody knew, and this person knew, that the Rebbe had never been in Paris. He didn't know about business as such. He was not involved in all these things, but he knew that the Rebbe is a Rebbe, that Yesh Rebbe B'Yisrael, that the Rebbe is the Mal Megedev Agbolas of Teva. The Rebbe is completely detached and elevated from everything to do with anything natural, anything normal, and therefore, when we write to the Rebbe, we're writing to the Rebbe and relying on the Rebbe's Ruach HaKodesh. That's what we're relying on. There was, I remember one time when I was in yeshiva in Crown Heights, there used to be a Israeli newspaper reporter who came originally, he came from Russia. His name was Yehuda Paldi. And he used to write, he had a very, he was a very capable writer, articulate writer for newspapers, for articles. He used to do a lot for the Rebbe in connection with Mir Yehudi. I remember that on Shavuos, Tovshin Chof 1969, I remember and the one thing was, when he came out of Russia for 20, 30 years, he was always walking with a limp, and he was always walking with a walking stick. And in the middle of the kosher bracha, sometimes you have to spontaneously respond to the Rebbe's bracha, otherwise you lose it. And the Rebbe said to him in kosher bracha, "Warf weg the Stecken." Throw away your walking stick. And here's this guy, he's been walking with a walking stick for 30 years. He can't balance himself, even on Shabbos and Yom Tov and on Yom Kippur. He's walking with a stick, he needs to support the stick. Here's the Rebbe. And the Rebbe is saying to him, "Warf the Stecken, throw away the stick." And the Bachman quickly said to him, "Throw it, do it." Because they didn't want him to lose the bracha, the opportunity, because sometimes, you get the bracha's given, but if you don't cut straight away, then it's always a money bottle kavana. Sometimes it passes over. And sure enough, the rest of his life, the next few years, until he was nifted, until he passed away, he never walked with a walking stick after this. Because the thing is that we have to know that when the Rebbe tells us something, when the Rebbe gives us a bracha, when the Rebbe gives us guidance, whether it's guidance that he gives to the individual, or guidance which he gives to Klal Yisrael, or he gives to us as Hasidim, Bichlal, we have to know the Rebbe means business. There's no such thing here. There's no playing around with the Rebbe. We think we can fool around here and there, but there's no such thing as this. And following on, we're speaking about Mitzvah Tefillin as a typical example to one of the Mitzvot. I have a minhag in Glasgow, and I also have a minhag here in Melbourne, that I carry around. How many times, number one, we have to ask ourselves, how many times, when was the last time that we went out and put on tefillin with another yid, other than ourselves? We have to think. We're not asking to embarrass anybody and going around with everything, but you've got to think to yourself, when was the last time that we put on tefillin with somebody else? And I have a minhag that in my car, in Glasgow, in the trunk of the car, in the boot of the car, and in the trunk of my wife's car, we have spare pair of tefillin always. Because the worst thing is, in numerous occasions, you know, we've been in a situation, we've gotten, and we've met somebody, you go somewhere, and you meet some Israeli, and you say to yourself, if I had a pair of tefillin now, I could put on tefillin with a guy. I lost the opportunity. So we have to be like the plumber. What does the plumber do? The plumber walks with a screwdriver all the time in his pocket. You know, all the time he's prepared, like a Boy Scout, always prepared. And similarly with us, just like, you know, they used to say the story about, what was it, the hang of horses outside outside a person's house, or whatever it was. Today we walk around with a pair of tefillin. So this time again, you know, you see if there was an article a few months ago in the Hair magazine about 50 years of mitzvah tefillin, and one of the points that was being made in the article was the fact that the Rebbe wants that every Jew, if at all possible, we should try and get every Yid should at least become in the getter of Kafta Demonam Tefillin. The Gemara says that what is Posh Yisrael, the Lupon, what does it mean, a Posh Yisrael, an intentional sin among the Jewish people in their body, is a Kafta Demonam Tefillin. The Rebbe brings out from the Gemara Menachos, it's a brain, it's a head that's never had a pair of tefillin, kosher tefillin put on it. And therefore the Rebbe explains that by putting on tefillin with a person, even one time, you're mishana the mahus of that person. You change spiritually, we change that person, because we take the person from being in this category of kakavta deloiman tefillin to make him a kakavta demon tefillin. And the thing is that, sure enough, I could write 3 or 4 pages now of stories that happened to me over the past 2 weeks since I left Scotland to come to Melbourne, Australia. We arrived in London Airport on Monday evening, 2 weeks ago. And unfortunately, there was a problem with the ticket. And what happened was, we had to delay our trip by 24 hours. And what we did was, we went back to North London to stay overnight in a hotel. And sure enough, what happened was that the next morning, I was in Golders Green in North London. I was in a bookstore, and I suddenly met, I saw that in this bookstore, the Jewish bookstore, there was a mother and a father, and with coming up a mitzvah boy, buying him a pair of tefillin. And as I often do, I said to the father, I said, tell me, have you put on tefillin yourself today? He said, no, I haven't, Rabbi. I said, would you like to see how to do it? He's like, sure, I'd be delighted to do so. And sure enough, I put on tefillin with this guy, while the bookstore owner was a bit stunned, but it was all happening so fast. And sure enough, the wife's already taking pictures and sending the pictures all around. And then he's asking, is this all you have to do? And we explained to him that, yes, sure enough, all you need to, the very minimum is that you just put on the tefillin for a minute or two, and you say at least part of the Shema. And he said, well, you know, it's certainly a thing that we are going to consider doing now, from now on a regular basis, as a result of this. Anyway, that accidental delay of our trip was step number 1. Step number 2 was we left London and we flew to Singapore, and we were in one of the lounges waiting between the flights, and all of a sudden we're looking at the food over there, and the guy comes over to me. He said, what are you doing here, Rabbi? I said, what are you doing here? Like as if to say, if the food's not kosher, what are you doing here? I said, tell me, have you put tefillin on today? He said, Rabbi, leave me alone. I said, come on. I said, it'll only take you 30 seconds. It's divinely inspired that we meet up here tonight, and not tonight, today. Let's put on tefillin. Sure enough, he put on tefillin, and within 5 minutes he's already sending emails to all his Lubavitch rabbi friends. Chaim Jacobs in Scotland nagged me in the middle of the airport in Singapore. He was so happy to have come. But again, if I didn't have my tefillin with me, if I left them on the plane, or I left them in my luggage, what the situation would have been, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do it. Anyway, so that's incident number 2. Last week, we went overnight. We went overnight to Sydney overnight, and when we checked into the hotel, so I see that the guy, his name has got his name tag is Benjamin, and I thought, and he looked quite refined. He looked a bit Yiddish. So I said to him, I didn't say to him, are you a Jew? I said, where's the nearest shul? He said, well, the nearest shul is 2 or 3 blocks away. So he already knew we were on the same wavelength. So I said to him, would you like to put on, have you ever put on tefillin? He said, actually, I did it a few weeks ago, but I'm more than delighted to do it again now. So I said, well, then take me over to my apartment, to the room where I'm staying, and then we'll put on tefillin. Sure enough, he was only too delighted to put on tefillin, take a picture. It transpired, unfortunately, he's about to marry out to a non-Jewish lady, a girl, but who knows, maybe as a result of putting tefillin that will trigger his teshuva. But whatever the situation was, sure enough, he put on his tefillin, and then there must be another Jew calling to put on tefillin. Anyway, after that, we took a taxi in Sydney. We took a taxi to a particular destination where we were going, and again, the taxi driver transpired he was a Russian Jew from a desert, and I asked him again if he'd like to put on tefillin. He said, Rabbi, sure, here. He said, as soon as we stopped, I put on the tefillin, and he put on tefillin. And the bottom line was he put on tefillin, and he wouldn't take a penny for the taxi ride. But that was just a bonus. But the main thing was he was only too happy to put on tefillin. Anyway, the next morning I was walking around in Sydney. And what happened was that there was a travel agent called Sabra Travel, and I went over and I said, anyone here would like to put on tefillin? And sure enough, there's a boy sitting by the door, 15, 16-year-old boy, said, I'd love to put on tefillin, and he went into the back and he put on his tefillin. Anyway, that afternoon, I was in somebody's house and visiting somebody, and we're in this particular house, and there's this couple in the house speaking with this particular person, and it transpired that, again, I asked this person in this house if he'd like to put on tefillin. He was delighted to do so, and it transpired that the guy's wife is actually a daughter of a prominent Lubavitch family in Crown Heights, who unfortunately she's drifted away without mentioning the name from Yiddishkeit, but hopefully as a result of this, maybe when she couldn't believe how I knew her parents and everything else, and you know, who knows, you come a certain day, you're at a certain time, a certain place, everything is predestined, and you are where you are at a particular moment. And then a few minutes later, I was in the house with Rabbi Chof, and he says to me, my next door neighbor, ask him if he wants to put on tefillin. And sure enough, I said to him, would you like to put on tefillin? He said, sure, I'd love to do it. And again, he was married out, but he was only too delighted to put on tefillin, and he sends me an email later on, Rabbi, thank you very much for the blessing and the opportunity to do this wonderful mitzvah. So you can never tell what's going on all the time. On Monday afternoon, Tuesday, but today's Thursday. On Tuesday afternoon, I was in Gold's bookstore down in Carlisle Street, and there's a guy in the store, and this person, he's looking at the books. He's with a ponytail and no yarmulke, of course, unfortunately. And I started speaking to him for a minute, and I said to him again, I said, would you like to put on tefillin? He said, sure, I'd love to do it. And he told me that not only he used to go to the yeshiva gedola, the yeshiva school here in Melbourne, but he said his brother is from a yid. He said he was in the Koil, here the Chabad Koil here in Melbourne, and everything else. Unfortunately, he drifted off, but he was only too happy to put on his tefillin. And then again today, I was in a shopping mall downtown in Melbourne. One of the outlets store. There's an outlet mall down in Brooklyn. Yeah. And again, I meet up this guy, and I said to him, I started speaking to him about one or two things, and I wasn't quite sure whether he was Mexican or Israeli, but it transpired he was Israeli. No, he was only so delighted that he wanted to put on tefillin today, and not only that, again, sadly, he's also got a relationship with a non-Jewish lady. I took his name, his Hebrew name, to put on the tzion, that hopefully Ruach Memorim will rest on him, and he'll change his mind and change his direction of his lifestyle. But each and every one of these stories, which I'm sharing with you just now, only took place for one reason. They took place for one reason, because I had my screwdriver in my pocket, because I had tefillin with me. I was carrying tefillin with me all the time when I was going around. And because the Rebbe had told, particularly, the Rebbe had said to me about that your shlichus is be'iroi, in your bebeisoi, be'iroi, in midosoi, and be'mokem achirochoi. So we understood that what the Rebbe is meaning to say to us is that wherever you are, we have a shliach. Once a shliach, always a shliach. We always have a shlichus to do. But if we didn't have the equipment, if we didn't have the tefillin in our pocket, in our bag, in our car, then we would not be able to do this. And I don't know how many people, Rabbi Engel, he has a bookstore here, so he must sell tefillin. I don't know how many people have come and bought tefillin from you since I was here 2 years ago, Rabbi Engel. But a spare pair, I'm speaking about for everyone. But, nobody's going around embarrassing people. Go around and say at the table, when did you last put on tefillin? Nobody's looking to do that. We're not looking to embarrass people. We're just looking to be machazik people, to encourage people that we should take on and give the Rebbe nachas. We should not think that it goes missed. We shouldn't. One of the things the Rebbe once said, one of the Farbrengen is that when Mashiach comes, one of the Mashiach will ask, well, how many people did you put on tefillin? And we shouldn't be called with our pants down. We shouldn't be called that we've never done in the mitzvah. We all in each one of us, each and every one of us, if we do it, we can do more. If we don't do it, or we're in business, or we're later guys, whatever it is, each and every one of us should take on and try and strengthen ourselves, because we're coming now. Today's Teves, we're coming to Yahrzeit, and we go to Purim, we go to Yudal Nisan, and everything else. But why do we have to wait? Why do we have to wait for a crisis to take place in Israel, and in order to bring about that we're going around the mitzvah tefillin? Why don't we just pick ourselves up, and we should say to ourselves, there's Rabbi Gordon here. I remember once reading, there was an article in the Sheikh Chabad News, Rahman Islam, when his father was passing away, that when he was going to all the doctors, one of the things Rabbi Gordon, the father, was always saying, he was said to the doctors, doctors, one favor I want you to do for me. Correct, Rabbi Gordon? He said, one thing I want you to do for me is to at least put on tefillin one time. you know, he was crunk, he was ill, he was dying, whatever it was. But to the last moment, he had this shlichus on his mind to keep doing what the Rebbe wanted us to do. And this is what each and every one of us should be, you know, we should be trying. And the Rebbe said one time, but to the Sheikh Chabad, that the ishtatvus of the women is that they should buy a pair of tefillin and they should encourage their husbands to go with the tefillin, because it's a mitzvah shazman groma, and therefore because it's a mitzvah shazman groma, it's dependent on time. Women are part from this mitzvah, but nevertheless, the ishtatvus, the contribution the women can make to this is by encouraging their husbands and their children to go and mitzvah tefillin, and each and every one of us, you know, at least, let's say let's be kind. The very least, we should not go by a whole week without putting on tefillin with someone. We should all be makabel upon ourselves to start, you know, next time we make a few dollars, buy a spare pair of tefillin, put it in your car, put it in your wife's car, and wherever you go, look. You go in Carlisle Street, you go in downtown, you go wherever you go, there's Yidden. We can always find another Jew who's muchen mazuman. He's ready to put on tefillin, and all he's waiting for is for us to go and approach the person. And one time, many years ago, there used to be a Pagishim Chabad. There still is. There's various Shabbaton programs that take place in Crown Heights on various Shabbosim. And on one occasion, we went into Yechidus between the Pagisha of the women and the Pagisha of the men. And the Rebbe said to my wife, "Did you speak?" The Rebbe said to my wife, "Did you speak at the Pagisha? Did you speak at this seminar this past weekend?" And my wife said, "No, I wasn't asked. I wasn't invited to do so." The Rebbe said to her, "In Lubavitch, we don't wait for invitations. In other words, we go out, we offer our services. You don't wait for the Israeli Jew or the Jew full stop, the non-religious Jew, to come looking for us. We go out and find him. If you have a neighbor, next door neighbor, or a friend, or a business associate, if he's got tefillin, you make sure that tefillin are kosher tefillin. If he hasn't got tefillin, you get him to buy tefillin, and you make sure he knows how to put them on." And the Rebbe said that part of the mitzvah tefillin is not only going out putting on tefillin, but it's also learning the dinim, and so on and so forth. And I think one of the haplotas, you know, just like in the last parak of Tanya, in Igros Kodesh at the very end, in the Kuntas Achron, where the Alter Rebbe is shrine, Gewalt, Gewalt, at Olam, he says that he's coming by Yemoitod L'Olam Chashem, Gewalt, Gewalt. How much had Mosa Yisona L'Moikesh L'Odai V'Lonu B'Chol Techos V'Shofar Aleinu Hashem Yishureinu V'Yachamenu? How much more do we have to wait for all the tzoros and everything? We have to know that there has to be, you have a Farbrengen, and the bottom line of Farbrengen, there has to be a achlota. Achlota means you're machlit, you make a decision, you take upon yourself something which is be'erem, something which is in the physical capability of each and every one of us. And one of these things is that each and every one of us should be makabel upon ourselves to be machazik, mitzvah and tefillin. That was the first campaign of the Rebbe, and following on from that, all the other campaigns as well, whether it's candle lighting, whether it's kashrus, whether it's mikveh, whether it's sforim, whether it's limud Torah, whatever it is, whichever mitzvah it is, each and every one of them mitzvah. We have to try and be machazik them, because this is what the Alter Rebbe and all the Mamali Makom of the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, and the Mamali Makom of the Mittler Rebbe, that's the Rebbe that's Shemat Tzedek, and the Rebbe Marash, and then the Rebbe Rashab, and the Frierdiker Rebbe, till the Rebbe Nasi Dereinu. each one of us, we have to know that each one is Mamali Mokim the Gamri. And if you only need to read up and learn and see how the Rebbe taught us to become fantastic businessmen selling Yiddishkeit. The Rebbe taught us what it means to campaign. A campaign with advertising, with pushing, with cajoling people, with encouraging people, but the bottom line is we have to get off our backside and do something about it. Not just sit here and say, oh, you know, Chaim Jacobs came and he said some nice things, and it's on the internet and all the rest of it. That's not the bottom line. The bottom line is that there should be a per yotzer. There should be a bottom line result from what we're discussing here this evening, that we should take upon us to connect and reconnect with the Rebbe through the Mitzrayim and through learning the Rebbe's Sichos and the Rebbe's Maimorim, and each and every one of us who was in Yechidus one time with the Rebbe, or we were in Dollars with the Rebbe, that we should, once a week, we should sit down and we should think for 2 or 3 minutes and visualize in our mind that spiritual experience that we have with the Rebbe, and realize that however powerful we thought the Rebbe's guidance was at the time, it's 100 more times more powerful now, because we're seeing and we're hearing all these tremendous moifsim of the guidance of the Rebbe, that there's no fooling the Rebbe, there's no playing around with the Rebbe situation. You know, you come along, you know, there's a famous story. There was this Mr. Ben Sir Rezo Shor. The story's on Chaim, it's on COL or whatever it is. You can see the story there. And this particular person, he went. He was in New York and he went on business. He went to Detroit on business. And when he was there, he met up with this guy in business, and the guy was happy to put on film with him. And the guy was machlet. The guy said that when if you get me a pair of tefillin, then I'll be happy to use them every day. So the guy wrote when he got back to New York, he gave a report to the Rebbe. And what did he write to the Rebbe? He said that he met up with this guy and he put on tefillin, and the guy said that if you know, if I had a pair of tefillin, I'd be happy to use them every day. And the guy he wrote to the Rebbe that in Mitzvah Hashem, when he's in Detroit in a month or two's time, again on business, he'll go and deliver this pair of tefillin to him. And the Rebbe wrote out to him, you expect me to wait and be happy with you waiting for 2 months till you go to Detroit again to get tefillin to this guy? The Rebbe said to him, you go and buy a pair of tefillin today, and you send them out first class with a day delivery, a courier to Detroit, and make sure that the guy gets his pair of tefillin immediately. With the Rebbe, there was no concern. The Rebbe, no such thing with the Rebbe. You know, there's no such thing as any limits in spending money in order to get a Jew to do another mitzvah. And with all these different stories, they're all very nice stories. We read my story, we look at Jem, we look at Rabbi Butman's story, we look at this story, we look at that story, we read this story, that story. The bottom line is that we have to try and connect with the Rebbe and try and do in the Mitzrayim, starting, just to finish off and tell you one other story before we conclude. There's it was the years back in the 80s, the late 1780s, when the Rebbe used to have the main Farbrengen, midweek Farbrengen. The Rebbe it used to be transmitted on cable TV. And what happened was that on this one occasion, some Bochrim were going somewhere in Long Island during Chag Sukkot, Sukkot. They were going around trying to find customers to put on, to shake Lulav and Esrog with them. And they came to this house, and there's like very large maxi mezuzahs on the door. So they thought, you know, the maxim mezuzahs on the door, then sure there's probably a Hamish who is for a knock at the door, ring the bell, speak to him, and he'll tell us where we can find other Yidden, we can find other Jews. And what happened was that this guy comes out to the door. He wasn't a religious Jew, didn't have a yarmulke on, had shorts on. Don't worry, he was a man. But what's it called? And what happened was he invites them in. He invites them in, and they start chatting, and he's very happy. They explain to him what they're doing. They're going around putting on film, we're shaking a little nest with people, and maybe you can tell us whether some other Jews live in the area, in the neighborhood, and so on and so forth. And then the guy, they started speaking with him, and they asked him, it doesn't quite match up. The large mezuzahs don't quite match up with your outward external appearance. You know, what's the story here? So he said, I want to tell you a story. And this is a true story again. He said, I'll tell you something. 4 or 5 months ago, I had a column. I had a dream. And in my dream, I died. And when I died, they took me and they put me in the coffin, in the chapel, in the funeral parlor, and all my friends are standing around and everything else. And all of a sudden, he said, all of a sudden, a voice goes out and it says, who will be responsible for the sins of this man? And this is all in a dream. And out the blue, a man with a white beard suddenly appears, and he says, I will be responsible for this man. And he disappears. And this guy, he then wakes up from his dream. Can you imagine? He's had a dream, he's died, he's dead, he's in the funeral parlor, somebody's calling out who will be responsible for his sins. He sees suddenly this man with a white beard, he sees it very clearly, and suddenly the image disappears from his memory, and so on and so forth. A week or two later, he's going through the New York Times, a newspaper, and he sees that there's a full-page advert in the paper advertising that on such and such a day, it was Yud-Beis Tammuz, on such and such a day, the Lubavitch Rebbe, and there's a big picture of the Rebbe, will be speaking on cable TV. And he says, oh, this is Oish, this is this man. This is the man I saw in my dream. So this Meshugana, he wakes, he rushes, bottom of the advert, 770 Eastern Parkway, takes a car, gets over there, he goes into the Meccas, he needs to speak to the rabbi. They explain to him, you can't speak to the rabbi just like that. He said, I must speak to the rabbi. He came to me in a dream. But, you know, the maskirim, the secretary, thought he was crazy. They said, listen, all right, listen. If you hold presents, if you hold that what you're saying is true, is accurate, write to the rabbi a short note, and we'll see what the rabbi says. And the rabbi wrote back that be'emes higias man shielach mi'olamo. The time had come that you were supposed to leave this world. Ubliskus, in the merit that you'll be makabel on yourself, a sofer Torah mitzvahs. You'll take upon yourself to increase in observing Torah mitzvahs. Maskil mi mitzvah mezuzah, starting with the mitzvah mezuzah. In that you'll have a Richa Shomim. So of course the rabbi, the secretary, they arranged for some people to go out and put mezuzahs on his doors, and that's how he had the maxi mezuzahs on his doors. And he said, now, don't leave, don't worry, don't rush, okay? Just sit down, relax, okay? We're not finished yet. Nobody's embarrassing you. Okay, so he said, now he sees that the rabbi, first of all, the rabbi wanted me to start with a mitzvah mezuzah, And now, obviously, the rabbi wants me to do the mitzvah, the lulav and esrog for the rest of the festival. So he bought the set of lulav and esrog from these guys. And this is another true story. There's so many stories, story after story, how the Rebbe connected with people all over the world in the farthest places. The Rebbe felt, and he saw there's a connection with every Jew, and the Rebbe wanted that Jew, every Jew should be included in Klal Yisrael. And this is the whole Hemshech, this is the whole point what the Rebbe said on Chof Zayin Nissen in Tovshin Nun Beis. The Rebbe said at the time, in Tovshin Nun Aleph rather, in 1991, the Rebbe said, give the Sivas Sa'ai, because the Rebbe was saying, because really and truly we all know that the tzaddikim in their own right, they could have brought Mashiach. They could have brought Mashiach and transformed the world. But the transformation of the world has to be completely from the top, like the Rebbe said about the Louvre, about the crane, that you have to take it and lift it from the very, very bottom, and you lift up the whole civilization, the whole Jewish people, the whole civilization, the whole world. The Rebbe wanted to give this Yahrzeit because the Rebbe wants that each and every one of us, the Rebbe's Hasidim, the Rebbe's Shluchim, the Rebbe's Tamimim, the Rebbe wants that each and every one of us should be part and parcel of this transformation to make it happen. And therefore, give this Yahrzeit, the Rebbe's given it over to us, that we, the Kleiner Menschen, we have, us small people, we have the power, the potential, the ability to bring about this Galus of Melech Mashiach, and the Yahrzeit that should be B'mher B'yomeinu, we should be Zeicha, this Galus of Melech Mashiach, and I hope that, please God, a lot of you will consider buying a pair of tefillin for your cars, so having to make sure you've got them all the time, and then consider, please, going round to work on the mitzvah tefillin and the other mitzvah in such a way that when it comes to Yud Shvat, it comes to Yud Alav Nissen, and it comes to Bias Mashiach, and we line up, and each one of us comes faced with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, what did you do to bring Mashiach? We'll say, Rebbe, I tried, I did something, I tried to put on tefillin, I tried to get a guy to have a Mezunah door, I tried to get this family to eat house mishpacha or to eat kashrus. But if you can't even say to the Rebbe, and you know yourself, that with the Rebbe there's no kunsa. When you say tried, the Rebbe means tried. If you're saying just words, you're paying lip service, but you really didn't, it was from the sofa of the chutz, and you really didn't try, the Rebbe's not going to be very happy with us. So let's make the Rebbe very happy with us, with each and every one of us, and give the Rebbe nachas now, give the Rebbe's nachas, that when Mashiach comes, we're going to say, Rebbe, Ritzaneinu, Liris is Malkeinu, and Rebbe, Osinu, Shlichoscha, we did your shlichas, Al Brega Achron, to the last moment, to this Galus of Mashiach, and Yehiratzim, we should be zerking to this Galus, and Bias Mashiach, Sikenu, Bakar Mamash, L'chaim, L'chaim, Voltu, L'chaim, Shabbos, L'chaim.